Hey guys, welcome to the Neglected Podcast. This podcast is not to change your mind, but to invite you into somebody else's narrative. This is a podcast to give a voice to the neglected. It is also an opportunity for all of us to engage.
All right, welcome to the Neglected Podcast. My name is Nick Schultz. You can hit me up at Schultz time. We're at For the Neglected. We are here in City Church. Thanks for hosting. Producer Quinn Harris, thanks for being here, man. You're the man. And we have a special guest / co-host today.
Yes.
Miss Jovanna Javis. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good.
You are good. Well, we'll see if you're good after this interview.
Yeah. Yeah, let's see.
So we are just do a quick recap of why we're doing what we're doing today. But we want to talk a little bit about just race and your perspective on it, what's been going on the past few months, because it's definitely escalated in our national in our country, in our lives, and everything going on, especially with COVID. But just super quick recap for people who may not have seen your first episode or many of us talking. I went to Rwanda many years ago, learned a lot about racial reconciliation there, and from the genocide. You were one of the people that when I came back after our first couple trips, I was like, you got to go. I know you're hard about this stuff. I know you haven't been on a plane, but you got to get over to Africa and to Rwanda.
Get on the plane.
And eventually got you over there. You went twice. You learned a lot, as did I, my wife, other people went with us about just racial reconciliation and how much it takes for that to happen, especially for them when they had 1 million people get killed by a different tribe of people. And then we would have conversations here in Savannah about racial things, stuff you're going through, especially going through being at a predominantly white church that I was working for. And we would just have conversations about what that was like and wanting to see and be a part of things that we didn't really think were happening, conversations that weren't happening and things that the church wasn't really doing, we wanted to be a part of. So this podcast started, and that was one way of having that happen. But then fast forward a lot, and this past spring, COVID happens, and then Ahmaud Arbery and some other folks and police and blah, 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 blah. We're in a thick right now. So what I wanted to do was just have honest conversation with you and for me too, but specifically getting your point of view, because something we really wanted to be a part of was having racial reconciliation conversations. And what I didn't mention was we also were part of co-leading 2 racial reconciliation groups as well, and going through like a 10-week curriculum of what it takes to do that. And we plan on doing another one, hopefully in the fall.
Yep.
But where we're at now is we wanted to be a part of something like that, knew that if something major happened in our country or our city, like it could get ignited and tension could happen and conversation could happen, good or bad. Mm-hmm. And we're right in the middle of it now. And I just want to know your perspective of, I wanted to be a part of something where there was a movement to have these conversations, but then it got put on like steroids basically in the middle of a pandemic and everybody having an opinion on it. So before we get to all that, just where were you in just kind of mentally, emotionally, and what you thought was going to happen maybe when stuff really first started happening with Ahmaud Arbery? That was really kind of where stuff really kicked off. And what was your hope when that happened, just as a Black woman, but also for kind of conversation or national discourse,
Yeah, I think the numb part of me didn't expect as big of a response as it actually got. And so if we start there with Ahmaud Arbery, that was a beautiful moment for me, because for the first time, I saw not only people that I expected to speak on it, but seeing people and seeing churches and seeing organizations stand up and say something. And that was amazing. And I had I think of that first couple of weeks, there was a lot of really good conversations of people reaching out to either me or even posts I was seeing. So that was really good. And like for me, that was that like, wow, we're at that first step. We're at awareness. For a lot of people who were already in awareness, this was like, okay, it's let's get some momentum. So I think in the beginning for me, I was very encouraged because I felt like, okay, this is momentum. But then as things went on, I went into feeling that pain again, because then the posts started coming about who he was, and see, he's not that great of a person, and just that dehumanization. And so in the beginning, it was very much like this response of like, I can't believe this was going on for 3 months, and this is wrong, and this can't stand, and seeing people wanting to be involved and get engaged, have conversations, send emails. And then it quickly did pivot to, at least on my timeline, pivot to the dehumanization, to the buts. But the buts were a little bit long, like it was a little bit more delayed on my end. And so I think for me, it is this roller coaster of emotions, and still even now, of being really hopeful because I'm seeing so much engagement, people wanting to read, people wanting to join groups, wanting to learn how to gain a voice, but then also on the same end, seeing like the digging in of heels happening, and it happening so firmly. And there's a whole slew of opinions, and I understand that it is a lot to take in. And like you said, this is all happening in the backdrop of COVID. So no one's life is anywhere close to normal right now.
Right.
So that on top of racial unrest, on top of protests and riots and elections, there's so much happening in this one moment. And so I think for me, it is that both feeling hopeful, like, let's go do this. Like, we've got something here. We've got momentum. We've got people who are ready to engage, who are probably on the fence or just want to know how. But then also that discouragement of like seeing how much further we have to go, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, we have I think a unique perspective because you're a Black female, you're a counselor. And so, you're really good at drawing out things and people and listening and having conversations and questions. And I'm a former pastor, a white male. And so a lot of times we send people to each other because I trust you, you trust me, and of multiple races. It's like, hey, you should go talk to Nick, get his perspective on this, because I can't give you that perspective from that side of it. And vice versa. And I've sent a lot of people your way and said, hey, you should talk to Jovanna. And it was even beforehand when we started doing the podcast. People would come up and be like, man, I really have a hard time just with some of the racial things I see. And before COVID, before Ahmaud, and I was like, talk to Jovanna. She wants to talk about this stuff. But there's so much stuff happening now that, like, you've mentioned getting burnt out. Like, you just want to go home and hide sometimes because so many people know that you want to talk about these things, you want to listen, and you're a safe person to have this conversation with and not judge where somebody is on that, whatever that spectrum is and how they view race. But that also takes a toll as well, because you can get beat up along the way, or friends think way different things than you thought they did. And it's been going on a few months now. So what's that been like for you, where you wanted to engage in this, but now you've been heavily engaged in it for like 2 or 3 months? And, are you encouraged and discouraged, or where are you at with that?
I will say I feel both, but it definitely was a learning moment for me, because yes, I want to have these conversations, but I think what I found is that it's not my responsibility to do all the teaching. But like when it came so fast, I wasn't prepared for it. So I wasn't prepared to get messages, get phone calls, to get emails. I wasn't ready for like that much of a response, because like nobody could have predicted that we would have these things back to back. Because I think Ahmaud Arbery happening, and then Breonna Taylor, and then George Floyd, all three of them combined, plus protests happening, then it turned into this like onslaught of like, I need to understand. And so initially there was that, it was great, and I was encouraged by people wanting to, but I was starting to feel then that discouragement of, you want to, but you don't want to be too uncomfortable. And if I'm not in the right place, I'm not going to let you sit in that. And so for me, I found that it does have to be a pacing thing of like, I don't have to respond right now. And I could also like just be direct with people and tell them that like today I can't. Because it was turning into that of like, I'm constantly answering immediately because I'm detecting from you that you are stressed, and now I feel like I have to answer you. I have to get you this book list. I have to get you this resource. And so that was one thing of like pacing myself, but then also directing people to like good sources of like go to the Be the Bridge website. So I did in my notes section, like kind of make like a pre-typed out thing, like, hey, here are some things you can go to, and like would copy and paste it into the messages. But I will say that initially I'm not as burnt out now because I have kind of figured out my stride, because I think really this isn't going to be a dead sprint. This is like going to be a long haul. And I think something that we've talked about, a concern of mine is that some people, when life gets back to normal, aren't going to be as engaged. And so not necessarily having to guard myself, but just kind of preparing myself for the fact that eventually this will die down. Eventually people who wanted to go join that organization or read that book's going to be put down, and just not to have that pressure on me that I have to help you along this journey, because that's their journey too. Yeah. So I think that there's all those things in it that I've kind of gotten to work out in the moment, because when it's calm, like the questions aren't coming that fast, you know. Like last year when we taught Be the Bridge, there's questions, but they're not coming like from 4 different people.
There's no emergency
blitz
going on around.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we talked about this too before, and it's like this perfect storm too. And it can be frustrating when, you know, you're working towards racial reconciliation. You're trying to help people understand, like, hey, we need to talk and we need to see some of the things that are really happening. But then to feel like it can also get crazy hijacked by political power or organizations or just social media or whatever media people watch. And then it desensitizes all of us to, hey, don't forget about those people that are actually in your lives that you can go love on and have conversations with and get to know personally, and make it about that as opposed to all these other huge things that are driving a wedge in between us. And that's been the frustrating thing for me. And I don't know how much of it is for you, but that's what wears me out, is that people who originally were like, oh, I want to know, I want to talk, and doesn't mean they're going to change their mind about everything, but at least engage in some of those things that they didn't think about before, and where people are coming from. But then it gets hijacked by these much larger groups, organizations, political parties, news, and then you forget that personal thing. Yeah. And really that's where the heart of everybody needs to change, is that personal thing. Like, don't think of it as, if I go spend time with someone who's black, is it going to change what I think about my political party, or what I think about the news I watch, or what I think about this organization? Like, just go to the person. Yeah. And that's the scary thing for me, is that I think we're going to lose that. And people are just pissed right now too. Like you said, COVID is going on at the same time, and they see riots and they see the news, and then race, and a lot of it for a good reason, but their lives have been turned upside down. Yeah. So we're not doing this in a healthy place right now. No. So that's the part that's scary too.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think exactly what you said is the problem is so large. And so it is down to what's within your control, what is in your sphere of influence. And I completely agree of not wanting to lose that, and not wanting people to start drowning in the bigness of it, because it's not, because I get it. Like, if you're new to this conversation, it can seem like, oh, all we need to change is, like, I don't know, the police. We just need to change that in the justice system. But it's more than that. It's neighborhoods, it's education, it's so many layers to this thing. This is a lot of stuff that you're unpacking, of how people are being affected in their life. And the thing is that I know that for me, I'm not going to be able to change how a politician decides to spend the money, or, I mean, I can sign petitions, but it doesn't mean anything if I'm not engaging, if I'm not going towards, if I'm not working in my sphere of influence and what I have control over. And so that's been the thing that like I've been encouraged about and disappointed in, and like trying to point people towards like what is within your control, and what are the things that you have. Who are the people that you influence? Who's the person next to you that needs encouragement, or that you don't know their full story? What can you do? And how can you personally engage with you and your children, or if you're single, you and your friends, as opposed to like, who is this person that we need to point at and say it's their fault?
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's kind of the conversation turned to that, which was disappointing of, well, it's this political party's fault and this political party's fault. And I'll just be honest, I don't really care, because I care about people. Like, I get that politics is important, but like getting down to the nitty gritty of whose fault it is, like I wasn't interested in that side of the conversation, which to me, I feel like that's unfortunately still where we are. I was like, whose fault is this? It was like, does it matter? There's people who are hurting. Like, does it matter who's like, yes, let's find out who did it. But at the end of the day, that person is still hurting and affected.
And we have so many senators, Congress people, you know, they're Democrat, Republican, whoever's president, these certain people have been in Congress so long, and stuff's still been the same.
Yeah.
A lot of things have still been the same, and it hasn't mattered who has been in control of certain things. Like, some people's lives are still the way they are and haven't been taken care of or thought of. And, you know, then it becomes just a political thing. Instead, like you said, instead of a people thing.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things we were talking about too is just, you know, so many people are concerned about being right instead of getting something right. And that takes a lot of humility, because when you try to be right, you're arguing. Like, you're going into argument mode when I'm thinking about being right, whether it's me personally or the thing that I support. Where if you come at it where, hey, what is right, or what am I willing to admit that I don't understand, and then go about seeing what is the right thing. There's not a whole lot of humility with what's going on, what people are consuming and seeing right now. It's just very, very divisive. And I think that part's been really discouraging too. Because you just say things like, you know, Black Lives Matter. And, you know, for some people it's like, well, heck yeah, of course, not all lives can matter unless Black Lives Matter. We have to care. But then some people, it's like, I can't get past what the organization means and who the leadership is and what they stand for. Like, I can't distance myself from that. And I'm personally just like, okay, I've got Black friends over here and they matter. That's just what it means to me. It's like, I want to hear what they have to say and know that I care about them. Or, you know, maybe I'll say something a little bit more personal before we get off here. But, you know, it's just, we're not willing to be personal with it. If the president changes, or our governor changes, or this structure changes, this organization's in charge, this happens, man, we're going to be so much better. But we still don't take the ownership of ourselves. Like, is that going to change my heart? Is that going to change your heart, how I live and how I view my neighbor? Probably not. We're looking for other things to change besides us personally. And I think that's been the heart behind this podcast and the heart behind asking you these questions, because, you know, however many people listen or watch us, like, we want to challenge them to have their heart be open to the people that are most affected by stuff and not what other people are telling them.
Yeah, no, sitting in discomfort isn't easy. And I think that is asking something of people. I feel like from my perspective of just from work, like the work I do, is I feel like I'm watching people who, if they were to just sit and challenge, like, why does this post make me uncomfortable? And they would sit in that, then maybe they would start moving in a direction, as opposed to, I feel this way about this post because it's wrong. It might be, but there's a reason why you feel friction. And so maybe sitting in that friction instead of lashing out at each other. I think that's been the thing that I've even tried, like, made sure that I practiced, of like, when I see a post that makes me feel uncomfortable or makes me feel angry, I don't let myself just respond to it, because there's something about that post that's rubbing me wrong. What is it? sometimes it's deeper than just, I think it's wrong. Sometimes I'm taking it personally because when I'm reading your post, what I'm seeing is, wow, like you don't believe me at all. Not one bit do you believe me. And is that worth, like, is me commenting on there worth it? Probably not, you know? And so I think if I think before I type, if I think before I respond, that makes, like, really get to why is this bothering me, you know? Because I think that is the main thing right now, you know, is that we're all kind of being bombarded. I know that my timeline will literally have one person that thinks like me, another person who doesn't think like me, someone who thinks, I don't know how they think, and it's all over the place, and then cat video. And so, like, it's all over the place. And I didn't want to defriend people, and I haven't, because I don't want to be in an echo chamber, because I don't want that for myself. But I know personally, like, that onslaught can be overwhelming.
So you're a counselor.
I am.
Yeah, right? I mean, you're licensed.
I am.
You admitting you're not in right now?
Yes. Uh-huh.
But we keep moving away from person-to-person interaction, face-to-face, eye-to-eye, hearing someone's heart, where you're not going to say stuff you would post on social media, like, to somebody's face. Because it would be a jerk face-to-face, but on, you know, you can post it and walk away on your phone or your computer. But we keep moving away from this. We get stronger opinions. We're getting more pissed off because our lives are still not back to normal. And we're getting farther away from empathizing and caring about each other or different groups of people than ourselves. So what is the challenge, and what do you think as a counselor to give people advice to, like, stay over here and not get so caught up way over here where you're just going crazy and you're actually removed from people, individuals?
Yeah. No, I think the first thing is acknowledging that that's what's happening, because I think what's going on with social media is it can help us dehumanize and not really see the fullness of that person, because now I only see what you posted, and now I'm not thinking of the fullness that is you. I'm not saying for any second that if someone is posting, like, horrible things constantly, that you shouldn't question if that's what's in their heart. But I do think it's easy to see someone post a meme, but then also to forget that you two both had a relationship, or that you had, you know, this is the person I used to get coffee with, or I used to read books with, or it can turn into this person is now my enemy. And so my first thing is, you know, scale back on the social media, and really when it comes to engaging with people face to face, I think the stuck point with empathy, the stuck point that I even had with empathy is that it is easier to empathize for me personally with the hurting, because it spurs me into action. Like, I can't fully know what it feels like to not have, like, a home, or not have parents, or be hurt, but, like, my heart goes towards that. But I think learning how to empathize with someone who thinks differently than you is a little bit more complicated, because that's empathy without compromise. That's what I've been calling it. It probably has a prettier name. But with it, like, I can understand why you think the way you do without compromising what I think. But I can still try to understand why you view things the way you do. If I didn't believe that racial unrest, if I didn't believe it was happening, then this would seem absurd. I don't agree with you, but I empathize that for you, that the whole world's out of whack and things are horrible and you feel attacked. I can see why you would feel attacked, because you don't believe the base of what I believe. And so I think that's a big thing too, is it's almost biblical about looking at yourself first. And I think that's the challenge, is that none of us have arrived. And I think that growing is not linear. And so we have to be patient with each other too. And so the first big challenge is, please step away from the social media. Because it's a hard and it's heavy. And if you can't step away from it, I would be asking myself, why? Why does it feel like I have to know what's going on? Like, what am I believing to be true? And I know that, like, when I've asked that question, the most common thing is like, if I don't know, then I'm going to be in the dark. And it's like, that's absolutely not true. You will know if something major is happening. I'm not saying go off the grid.
Right.
And so really be questioning those things and be going through your phone and thinking through who's someone I haven't connected with, or who's somebody that I need to talk to face to face, or that I would like to go meet with. I mean, if you don't feel comfortable doing face to face, who can I talk to on the phone? Who can I meet with? Because I think that we're also missing that human contact. So that's going to be important too. But then if you're around someone who doesn't agree with you, really challenge yourself in that moment to understand their perspective, without feeling like if you understand what they're saying, that means that you're sacrificing everything. That's not what it means at all.
It's not a win-lose situation.
No, and I think that we've created that absolutes, which is why we tend to say, like, be empathetic to that person, because you don't know what they're experiencing, and like they don't have, parents, and be empathetic to that kid that's acting up in class. Like, we can do that. But like, we can't seem to, we don't challenge ourselves in the other direction. And so if you have somebody that's you're friends with that is constantly saying something counter to what you think, let's wonder why. Mm-hmm. Let's wonder what their worldview is, because maybe it's polar opposite. And let's humanize them and try to see from their perspective. And if that's not something you feel like you can do, that's okay too. But let's not go on the far end of that person's evil, or they're awful, or I don't like that person anymore, because I think that that's not helpful at all.
Yeah. Well, something you said too is it gets said so often, but I have to unpack it a little bit when you say, especially from a church or Bible believing thing. I hear people say it's love your neighbor as yourself, or do unto others as you would have them do to you. Well, it sounds really good, and like it's true, but if like you don't love yourself correctly, or you don't have a good view of yourself, and I don't even mean like you view yourself positively, but if you have a healthy view of what you actually are, then what you do to other people can be very harmful. Yeah. Where you think you're being helpful. Well, I'm just giving them the facts. I'm just giving them the truth. I'm just being treated like I would want to be treated, and you might not actually understand how hurtful you are as a person, and you're not in a healthy place to do that. And when we say you got to check yourself, or check what your heart is at. Well, a lot of people, we can't do that. Like there has to be some kind of accountability, or like you allow other people into your life to say, hey, you need to chill about this, or like you're not healthy in this area, or you're way over here and you're not viewing people in a humanized way with this kind of stuff. If you don't allow other people to do that to you, and you don't have an assessment of like, do I have anybody that does that to me? Then like, yeah, you can be super harmful when you think you're actually being helpful or fighting the right cause,
Yeah. No, I think that's absolutely correct. I mean, I think if anything, if I just think about what counseling has been like work-wise, COVID exposed where everybody was mental health wise. If you were doing the work, then this really showed like the fruit of your labor and the areas that you need to improve. I think for everybody, even people who went into this mentally healthy, we've walked out of this. Me personally have walked out of this like, okay, these are some areas that I definitely need to improve in, and these are some areas that like, yeah, I'm pretty strong in. And my heart goes towards those that were already kind of past that point, who are not very healthy, because this is just has exposed how unhealthy that person is, or where they're at right now. Because I think that so much of this has to do with, why is it so important for you to be right? If you're finding yourself constantly having to post, let's just stay on the racial thing. If you find yourself on either side having to constantly post that this is real, or having to constantly post that this is not real, I would ask, why is it so important that you have to say it every day, or that you have to say it every hour? Like, what is spurring that forward? Because I think, for one, if you're on this side of like, I have to tell people this is real, you cannot make someone believe something that they don't believe. And that's where I'm at with it personally, is that I've learned how to recognize that like if you're not teachable, I can't force knowledge on you, because of course you're going to dig your heels in. I think that that's kind of what we're seeing from people who are digging their heels in, is we've kind of like forced this knowledge on them. The protest has been a forced, like, look at this. And they're like, I don't see it. And you're trying to force me to learn and I don't want it, you know? And even on the other end, if you have to keep saying that this isn't real, again, you're not going to change anybody's mind. And so is that for you? Is that for your people? Like, what is this for, that you feel this? Because to me, that feels like, I would interpret that as frantic energy. Like, what is this event making you feel frantic? And so I think the sad point is that we just haven't been in Western culture the type of people to be with ourselves or to look internally. That's a foreign concept to most of us. I know that when I first started really digging into counseling, I didn't want to be the counselor that told people to do stuff that I didn't do. It's not comfortable just sitting with myself in the ugly that comes out of my heart, and being able to look at the ugly that's coming out of my heart and not judge myself for it, but then also to address it, as opposed to leaving it there. And I think that this is like a crash course in all of that. But if you are running away from it on either side, no matter where you land, or if you're just plugging your ears and pretending that it's not happening, this is for you too. Why are you doing that? You know, like, this is a moment, I think, for all of us to have this internal look at ourselves of like, what is going on for me and with me right now?
Yeah, we've kind of been in a crazy situation as a family. We talked about it before the cameras went on. We have the opportunity through some friends to help out a African-American woman and her child who, been abuse and just a lot of other stuff. And we have the opportunity to step in as a family and kind of help and do something about it, and met with them. And, when we do that, I'm not thinking, who are you voting for? Not thinking, hey, what's your stance on Black Lives Matter? What do you think about masks? Who are you going to vote for? That stuff is really irrelevant. And I still see her color. And I care a lot more because I know someone like you, and I know people in my life who, they're real people, and we have real relationships. And it's not just this thing I see on the news with somebody telling me what you should think about them. And so when they need help and we have the opportunity to help, we help, whether they were white, Hispanic, or Black. But my point when I say that, and I tell people that too, with some of the mentoring stuff we do and helping some young men who don't have fathers and stuff like that, like, when someone's in need and you have the ability to help them, like, you don't think about all this other noise that you hear on social media or all these strong opinions people have. That person's struggling. Yeah. They're neglected. They're abused. They're whatever. And is their neighbor going to help them? Am I personally, just make it personal, am I going to help them? Are you going to help when you have the opportunity to help? Or do you need to know all these things about them that line up with what you agree with before you do it? Yeah. But you would think that would happen more, but we don't see each other that way. And now we're further insulated because of COVID, and we're further hiding in our homes because it's such a mess out there, and we're getting farther away from people. And yet there's all these opportunities to go love other people and actually live out that empathy that we say we have. If all these things would line up, structures and politicians and the things we want to happen, like, it would all be perfect. And it's not. But what are you doing personally out there for who's hurting right there in your own city, in your backyard? And I'm not trying to say that to be like, pat ourselves on the back, but we just have to continue to challenge people that way. And that, again, that's the accountability piece of, man, if you are friends with somebody and they have strong opinions, that's great. But I think it's okay for me to say, hey, it's all good for you to have that opinion, but like, give me the name of the person you're loving on that's different than you right now. Whether that's a conversation or just you're helping them tangibly, or you're getting to know what life is like for them, give me the name. And what I found out, there's a lot of times there's not a name as well with all the opinions about stuff. And to me, that's really the scary part. And sorry, I was going off on a tangent there, but that's the challenge, because you deal with people that are hurting all the time. So do I. And it's about bringing people into that place and not worrying about all the labels and the definitions you need in order to be comfortable.
No, and I think that it doesn't, I agree with you completely, because it doesn't, at the core of it, it doesn't matter. Like I don't know if I have this down perfectly, because it's something I've been playing with in my head, but I do think that we have gotten to a place where it is easier to feel like this is something as simple as how I vote, as opposed to when you start getting involved in people's lives, it's going to get messy. And it's a sacrifice regardless. I mean, I think for a long time, I've always assumed, well, because I'm extroverted and I lean more towards doing, this is why it's easier for me. But even in that, it's not easy. Like there's still a challenge for me. Like, because when you're serving people, like the thing that we do here at City Church is we're involved in a neighborhood. Sometimes people are just flat out mean to you while you're serving them. And sometimes people make assumptions about you, or they're rude, or it's hot outside, or it's raining and it's not convenient. And it's not, I don't want to be up this early on a Saturday. And that's not to say like, oh, look at me, go me. But the thing is that I cannot allow myself to not live with that full integrity. If I can't say, challenge yourself and go, if I'm not going to challenge myself and go. And sometimes it is getting on an airplane, and sometimes it's just going to your neighbor's house. And I say just because I think we do downplay it. We feel like, well, this isn't even putting a dent, but maybe what we're doing is bigger than we know. Mm-hmm. And so I think that it is.
There's plenty of dents happening right now all over the country. We need some nice dents. Yeah.
Right. No, but I think that's because so initially when this all happened, that was the first thing that went through my mind is like, wow, look at all these activated people and their gifting and how they're going to be able to go towards people different than I am.
Right.
Because something like you said that will pass people back and forth like, hey, go talk to Nick. But I know that for me, sometimes when I'm talking to people, they see me more as like counselor or as like an older sibling or as a friend. And there's certain things that I can't either that I'm going to say and it's not going to register or is going to register different. But if we're doing this as a team and if we're actually all going towards, what a world of difference that makes. And so that was for me that first moment of like having people reach out and say they want to be involved. I couldn't help be like, wow, they're going to be able to reach places and talk to people that not everybody's going to be able to do and talk to because of their unique gifting. But I think that we have to challenge ourselves to just get up and go. And I know with the backdrop of COVID, like that does kind of put a damper on it. But at the same time, we weren't before.
Right.
Like I can think of things anytime I've volunteered with anything, it's the same people.
Yeah.
And that's for whatever reason. And that's not to insult people that are uncomfortable, because I get it. Like there's so many different barriers, but at the end of the day, if we're not moving towards and we're just finger pointing, we're just a cacophony of noise.
All right. So that's a good segue. You said challenging ourselves, challenging other people, get up and go, moving towards something. You're using all these wonderful analogies and words to go and do something. So what is the challenge? You love giving homework. You love giving assignments of don't just talk about it. Let's do something about it. So as people are listening to this, hopefully, and watching, what's the takeaway now? What is your challenge in this time that we're in with everything going on, chaos going on? And what is a challenge somebody can do this week that's not going to completely overwhelm them, but that they can move towards something with someone else and bettering themselves and understanding and getting away from all the other noise?
Yeah. So, I mean, definitely turning off the social media, but this is like multiple fold, but if you are connected with a church, find out how your church is giving to the community, find out what they're like, either the organizations that they're partnered with or that they're engaged with. And again, if you're not comfortable leaving your house right now, I completely understand that. But what I would say, if you are comfortable leaving your house, if you are okay with wearing a mask, definitely go towards that thing. And if you're introverted or you're just nervous going by yourself, invite a friend to go with you. If you're not connected to a church, you can go to the United Way website, and they have a ton of like who they sponsor, like who are the people that they're referring to. Go and you can click on it and you can go to their websites. And maybe it is something as, and let's not say it's simple. Maybe it's something that you're just going to go across the street to your neighbor's house and leave a gift card, because right now things are hard. But I challenge you to look around either your neighborhood or what your church is involved with or what your community is involved with, and just tell yourself that you are going to go towards. And so maybe it is you and your kids sitting down and writing a nice little letter for that little old lady that lives across the street.
Yeah, that's good.
Maybe it's that. Like, but I think that turn off the social media and just dare yourself to look at your neighborhood differently, because even if we don't agree, all of us are uncomfortable right now. All of us are scared for various different reasons. All of us are having a hard time, some harder than others. So I think having that recognition of, you don't know your neighbor, like maybe you don't know your neighbor, or maybe you do know your neighbor, but let's just make these little tiny things, these things that are tiny, quote unquote, those are big. That matters to somebody. Leaving a gift card, leaving a picture. But that would be my suggestion, is, and definitely invite someone to go with you if you feel uncomfortable, and remove any barriers. And I'm going to take a note like from what you said, is make this a thing. Don't just go on the website, or don't just say, yeah, I'll go across the street to my neighbor's house. Make it a thing. Set a date to do it. I'm going to do this tomorrow after I get off from work at 4 p.m. This is not going to happen if it's something that you're not already doing readily.
Yeah. And I would even take it a step further for those that need it, because not everybody needs it, but for those that are advanced at helping people, or like need a little bit more of a challenge and are going to go for the easy way out of, I'm just going to go take a couple canned goods over to this neighborhood, I don't know, drop them off at the door and leave. You know, somebody might try to do a cop-out kind of giving, where some of us, you might need to go find a way to love somebody that is very different, and the person you're actually posting stuff against what you don't like, either political party or their view on race or on wearing masks or COVID, you know, somebody that really pisses you off. And like the reason you post stuff or you have those opinions is because of people like them. Challenge yourself to do what you're talking about for someone in that group.
Ooh, advanced challenge.
That's the advanced
one,
yeah.
Challenge and advanced.
Because, you know, I like to provoke people a little bit.
Yeah.
So
no,
you're a little bit gentler. I like to provoke you.
No, and that's why you're here. No, I think that that's awesome. That is an awesome idea, because I think that will, if you're in the more advanced module, that will push you to really walk out what empathy without compromise is going to look like. Like, what does it mean for me to love this person, care about this person, but that doesn't change who I'm going to vote for? Because at the end of the day, like we've been harping on, that doesn't matter, because a person is a person. It's a person.
That's good. I like it. Appreciate you being here.
Yes.
Appreciate you hosting. I mean, you do a great job hosting as well. So
thanks.
And Quinn, you do a great job of producing. City
Thanks.
Church, you do a great job of hosting.
Thanks for the building. Thanks for holding up those walls.
Yeah. So we appreciate everybody tuning in, and hopefully something here helped you a little bit and can challenge us, and we'll challenge ourselves to do what we're saying that other people should do as well. So we appreciate everyone tuning in, and we'll check you out next time. Thanks for being here, Jovanna.
Bye.
Peace.